It can be good with the air, right? Yeah.
Well, you can just
You leave it on?
that little bit.
The little one?
The little one, it's not that loud. You can still hear it.
Okay, I guess, well, almost everybody here knows me, but not everybody, so I'll just do, since we got some time here, I'm going to do a little backup introduction on myself. I'm originally from Odessa, Ukraine, and I immigrated with my family here in 1978. And grew up in San Francisco during my childhood, East Bay, through my adulthood, and basically on the West Coast. And got into health in 2004 is when I started looking into different ways of improving ourselves. I enrolled in John F. Kennedy University, got involved with the health science program there, got a BA through that program. Everyone here is familiar with John F. Kennedy University in Pleasant Hill? Okay, and so it's a great school. Then I went on, started working with youth between 2002 and 2007. And that was kind of the precursor to my motivation to start doing events like this and getting deeper into health, because I saw the young people that I was working with, they had a lot of serious behavioral issues. They couldn't concentrate, they mistreated one another. That was in Richmond and Oakland, and there was a lot of violence. The homicide rate was really high between 02 and 07. And I didn't quite put things together, but I knew there was a nutritional component that was causing a negative epigenetic manifestation in their reality. And so when I finished working with youth, I went back to school, got a master's degree in business, and then a master's in education. And so basically, yeah, that's kind of I'm a mishmash. I'm basically working in business, education, and health, kind of where it all comes together. I also spent some time working in the entertainment industry, working with nightclubs and putting on house music events. That was all in the last 12 years or so as well. And I learned a lot about culture, just basically music culture, pop culture, youth culture, and I began to see how the recreational alcohol industry was having an adverse effect on our whole reality without people actually knowing how they're being manipulated. And you have recreational alcohol, you have illicit drug abuse, you have junk food, junk beverages, and you also and dangerous pharmaceuticals all coming together and adversely affecting people's consciousness. So when you go into like 6th Street or 1001 in San Francisco or any other place where people are just kind of out of it, you can kind of see there's a manifestation of all those things coming together. And so right now I work as a nutrition consultant at the food mill in Oakland, and I do demonstrations for different product lines such as Garden of Life, and I travel around Rainbow Grocery, Whole Foods, Sprouts, Pharmaca. Those are kind of my main stomping grounds, and I do presentations. And so basically, but working within the stores, I still don't have the flexibility to really say what I want to say to people and express myself like the way I'm expressing myself here. So I figured out what can we do as a community to come together and create a platform where we could really begin to answer questions and get to the roots of things that we can't do in a corporate setting. You guys kind of get the gist of that. So that's kind of where I'm at now. So, like I was saying, poor brain nutrition actually leads to an unsafe world. I mean, when you look at all the wars that are happening, whether it be like in Africa or in Eastern Europe, a lot of these folks over generations didn't have the proper essential fatty acids, didn't have the right antioxidants, didn't have the right water, maybe bad air, and you have basically children being born to parents with basically already genetic abnormalities. Even though they look normal, they're not primed to be their best, and so they're very susceptible to being recruited by all kinds of nefarious agendas, whether that's a nefarious military agenda, a nefarious terrorism agenda, or a gang agenda, like you have in Central America and Mexico with the different drug cartels and gangs. A lot of these children didn't develop the right critical thinking capacity because they didn't have the right nutrients in their brain to develop the right neural networks. So there's a guy by the name of Gabor Mate, and he wrote a book called In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts. It's about addiction. You guys heard of Gabor Mate? He's a psychiatrist out of British Columbia. Yeah, in terms of explaining addiction and where addiction comes from, he's like the best. And he has this one YouTube video called Hold On to Your Kids. It's about an hour and a half YouTube presentation. And he talks about how you got to put children in the company of people that are more mature than they are in order to get the right growth out of them. It's a really good presentation. And the children in the settings here, they're hanging out with people that are like them and influencing them in an adverse way. So that's kind of the overall parameters of that presentation. But it's really good material, Gabor Mate. So yeah, bad brain nutrition creates bad neighborhoods. So how do the banks like take over third world countries, or even the US for that matter, and manipulate their economy? Well, the people don't have the willpower, they don't have the means, kind of the adrenal capacity to defend themselves in their community. They basically, give me a second, I'm gonna grab some water. I'm trying to get dry mouth. Give me a second.
This is yours. You try to find it.
Who here has noticed that in neighborhoods where there's like a lot of junk food and liquor stores, it's kind of a bad neighborhood? Pretty much anywhere you go in America, if the food's bad, it's probably something else is going to be bad as well. So basically, this presentation is cut into about 5 pieces. You have how fast we react to the human body, what marine mammals can teach us, plankton, algae, fish, krill sources, plant, seed, nuts, and fruits, and then land animal sources of fats. So all of our cells have a membrane, and this membrane is actually allows nutrients to pass into our cell structure and actually provide fluidity, permeability, flexibility, and structure to our cells. So why I'm so excited about healthy fats is because the healthy fats actually create a membrane. Are you familiar with the work of Bruce Lipton? The biology of belief. He's a big cell membrane, cell doctor. He's a cell biologist, but he's big on cell membranes. And so he explains a lot about how the membrane is actually the intelligence of the cell. The nucleus is like holding the data, that's like the hard drive, but really the intelligence of the cell comes from the membrane. So our brain is about 60% fat. So that's kind of the unspoken truth in our world. The part of the brain that's actually solid is actually 60% fat. And so the diets that are low in fat actually are brain damaging diets. So with the brain comes the hormones. The brain pretty much dictates to the rest of the body and to the glands which hormones are going to be successfully produced. And there's a taboo around hormones, discussions in general. It's now getting a little more popular and trendy to talk about hormones, but for most of our time we haven't talked about it, especially men and women in public have not talked about hormones, and it's kind of like kept like secretive, right? But I think the future of our organizational social networking, we're going to have to get down to the nitty-gritty and figure out what's really at the bottom of things. And that's why I want to bring out the discussion of hormones more into the public so we can kind of look at what's really going on. So you have an endocrine system with about 10 major glands in it. There's some other ones. These are the major ones. These three are in the brain: pituitary, pineal, hypothalamus. These are elsewhere in the body. Have you heard anyone heard of the HPA axis? The hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis. So the hypothalamus pretty much picks up on the signals of your environment first and foremost, and then it signals to the pituitary what's going on. And then if you're under stress, your adrenal glands are going to act up. So that's kind of, so you want to keep these three glands in the brain happy, and then all the other glands will more or less fall into place. Although imbalances here can also affect the brain. That's why you have to look at the endocrine system as a whole system and kind of see it that way. So there's a young woman doctor out of Berkeley who's actually really being a strong activist for educating women about hormones. And I recommend this book. Anybody who's in this business, or any woman who's basically between like 30 and 55, should get this book. It's a fundamental book. It's like looking for the conference.
Marcia.
Hello.
Boy, this is hard to find.
Chandra, if we run out of chairs, can you pull another one?
Yeah.
Open. Okay. All right. So the hormones that I highlighted in the dark, those hormones, if they get out of line, they create nasty things in the body. Like, you guys heard of insulin in terms of the relationship with blood sugar? Everyone pretty familiar with insulin here?
Yes.
Are you familiar
Yes.
with insulin? Yeah. Okay, so insulin resistance is one of the major hormone problems that people experience. Oh. Come on in, Dion.
Yeah, found you.
Yes. There's a chair up in
can't
front
see
right there.
too well.
Okay. There's a let me guide you around this table here. Let's go this way. This
Thank
way.
you, guys.
Yeah, there's a wire right here.
Can I sit here?
Yeah, right there's good. Or you want to sit here? Here, okay.
Thank you for your
Yeah.
patience, everybody.
No
Yeah.
problem. Can you see?
Yes, I can see good.
So, Dion, so I was basically starting my presentation on healthy fats for brain nutrition and hormone health. And right now I'm just listing out the hormones in the body, the ones that need to be attended to. And so as time goes on, as we age, men and women, a lot of our androgenic hormones like the DHA, progesterone, testosterone, those start to tank, and then estrogen goes up. And so you have the ratio that kind of gets out of line. That's what they call estrogen dominance. And that starts happening a lot to men and women, especially if men are doing things to damage their liver, like drinking alcohol, taking pharmaceuticals. Their liver is actually responsible for removing bad estrogen metabolites out of the body. Okay, so with women, it's during perimenopause where the progesterone goes down, estrogen goes up. So as we get a lot of the things with PMS issues and hormonal problems with moods and so forth. And Sarah Godfrey is really getting into this deeply and explaining that. And D3, melatonin, not a lot of people think of these as hormones, but these are very valuable hormones, melatonin especially. Both of these are anti-cancer hormones, like D3 and melatonin. If you have those, if you're sleeping good and you're getting sunlight, you're basically doing more than anything else you can possibly do to keep cancer away, like those two aspects. And then obviously now we have D3 supplements because not everyone's in the sun. But yeah, so that's exciting that we have women like this that are activating this energy around this topic. So, yeah, fat is a very valuable energy because it's dense, it's slow burning. So you guys understand why cars run on oil and not on crackers? Pretty much, there's a density, energy density to oil that you can't get from tree bark or bread, right? Or if you try to light a piece of bread versus a candle, the bread is going to burn pretty quickly, whereas the candle is going to stay lit for a while. So these are some of the benefits. So you have this is kind of deep biochemistry, but it's important enough for me to spend some time on it. Don't worry about like understanding the idea, but just understand that you have nutrient sensors in your body, and these nutrient sensors are best not antagonized. Insulin, when it's overly antagonized, overly pressed upon, you get insulin resistance, and that's diabetes. Leptin is a nutrient sensor, but that's also a hormone made by the body fat. If you get leptin resistance, you're basically always going to want to eat. And leptin is the hormone that tells you, hey, you know, I'm done eating for now. I'm not hungry. mTOR is a nutrient sensor that's tied to protein. And when you hear about like people getting cancer because they're eating too much animal protein, it's because animal protein stimulates mTOR, and it causes excessive cell replication. So like that's why someone with too much animal protein in their diet, that's one of the reasons. There's other reasons, you know, due to the oxidation or the food is burned and so forth, but too much mTOR could cause out of control cell replication. So, and when your body is not being activated by these nutrient sensors, healthy fats don't stimulate these nutrient sensors like other foods. So you're basically, your body, even though you're not restricting calories, your body thinks you are, and you start repairing internally. So when you're digesting food, basically you're digesting food. When you're not eating, you're repairing. So that's kind of in a nutshell. So intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting gives you a clear head so you can meditate. And meditating is definitely one of the ways to longevity and peace of mind. It's hard to like meditate when you like have a full stomach. It just doesn't work too well. It also allows your body, like I said, to repair, and your body releases intracellular antioxidants. And these are the three kind of the main ones that you want your body to activate. And then when you can't do intermittent fasting if you're not eating fat, because if you're getting your fuel from carbohydrates and even protein, those are going to burn out. So you're going to be hungry again like in 3-4 hours versus being able to go 6 or 7 hours. So this is typically called the ketogenic diet when you're running on fat. That's kind of the scientific name for it. So the mitochondria, who here is familiar with the mitochondria? Okay, so that's kind of like the power plant of your cell. That's what converts your food into usable energy. So your cells, like, they can't deal with carbohydrates, they don't deal with proteins, they don't run on fat, they run on ATP. So when you're eating whatever you're eating, it has to be converted to ATP. ATP is created through the mitochondria, and oxygen is how that is done. So at some point in time in our history, mitochondria are like little bacteria that basically merged with animal cells. And so once that happened, it allowed us to consume fat as fuel. Because before that, you had animal cells that were basically creating sugars, or really, plant cells were algae. They were creating sugars. Taking sugar, sunlight, carbon dioxide, water, and creating sugars. And so that changed when the mitochondria kind of merged. However that happened, it allowed us to adapt and not have to eat all the time. Oops. Welcome. Cancer cells, they don't respirate. That's why cancer cells don't like fat, because they can't digest it, because their mitochondria is dysfunctional, right? So they're not respirating. Cancer cells are fermenting nutrients in the body. So that's one of the other benefits from this method. So everybody here familiar with the Krebs cycle? That's basically what turns food into ATP. And the easier the food is to digest, the less oxidation. That's why when people like eat heavy food, they go to like a fast food place and their food is not digesting, they get brain fog. Basically, they're creating free radicals in the body. They're oxidizing. They're not feeling too well. Their food is not digesting properly. So this is basically like the 6 primary dietary fats that we consume. And they have different functions, but they're all important. Some are more important than others. So before I get into actual foods, this is kind of a side note. Like trying to cook with omega-3s, omega-6s, because they're polyunsaturated, which they have more openings for oxidation. Even though like sunflower may have like a high smoke point, it doesn't mean it's safe to cook with. And so people that are in this industry, like most of the big agribusiness conglomerates, they're into these 6 products, right? So they're trying to get you to cook with them, because that way you buy more of their products. So they tell you it's safe to cook with. It's really not that safe to cook with omega-3s and omega-6s. So there's multiple deficiencies, disease symptoms that come about with omega-3 and omega-6, but these are kind of some of the big ones. It's in our world, it's hard to become omega-6 deficient, just because most of the foods we eat have a lot of omega-6. But omega-3 is where you have to try a little harder and actually do supplementation and do various things to get it right. So what are hormones made from? Well, some of the most important hormones are made from cholesterol. And right now there's a lot of physicians, even cardiologists, that are breaking the mold and trying to get people not to be afraid of cholesterol. The problem with cholesterol is oxidation. When LDL cholesterol gets oxidized, because let's say a person doesn't have antioxidants in their body, or they have a poor diet, and the cholesterol becomes oxidized. That's when it becomes a problem. But LDL and HDL, they're not bad. Neither one is bad. They both are essential, and there's really no such thing as a bad cholesterol. And cholesterol is a very important point. The LDL cholesterol is actually, LDL stands for low density lipoprotein. So it's not really cholesterol, it's basically a carrier for cholesterol, because cholesterol is not water soluble, so it needs to be carried by a protein in order to get to the tissues to provide its band-aid function. So if you have tissue damage, that's why cholesterol goes into arteries and it kind of pockets itself there. It's mending up tissue damage in the arteries. And the idea is for it not to become oxidized. This is a great book. So who here are familiar with Jacques Cousteau? I think we are yet to fully realize what's in the ocean for us and what kind of life there is there to support us, both in terms of diet and consciousness. So I've been doing a lot of study about whales recently, just because my dad was the oceanographer for 40 years. He kind of got me interested in ocean life. He worked for the Soviet Union and the U.S. government. He was an expert in estuaries. And so I kind of had an inside look at the ocean. And some of the recent things I learned about, David Wolf talks about like whales and dolphins having a nervous system that's closest to ours, even more so than the primates. And so I started looking into what do we have in common. Well, it looks like whales and humans have something called spindle neurons. And this is an article from New Scientist that basically these are neural networks that allow a species to interrelate harmoniously with themselves, amongst their own species, and with other species. And whales have the largest concentration of these spindle neurons, and they've had them longer than humans. So when people talk about saving something, they often talk about saving the whales because there's an affinity there for the whales that's probably related to how harmonious they are, and we just like harmonious beings. So, came across some research on a bowhead whale, which is the second and most heaviest whale, and it's the longest living whale, and it's probably the longest living mammal. And they found one up to 200 years old, and they figured out it was 200 because it had a spear from 200 years ago that was in it. So I was trying to figure out what makes this whale different from other whales in terms of its longevity, because a blue whale lives long but not 200. And apparently the balines on this bowhead whale has a capacity to capture phytoplankton, and whereas the other balines of other whales, they're not as dense, so the plankton kind of come in and out, so they're only capturing krill. And as I'll show you later on, marine phytoplankton is the most complete food on the planet in terms of nutritional density, and it's one of the easiest to assimilate. So this might have something to do with longevity of this whale, is that it's actually consuming more marine phytoplankton than any other whales. So blue whale is pretty impressive too. They're eating krill. So the krill has the omega-3 in it, it has the phospholipids in it, protein source. They're growing massive hearts, massive nervous systems. So here's dolphin nutrition. Pretty much you have protein, you have minerals, you have omega-3s, you have phospholipids, a lot of zinc in that diet. You guys familiar with zinc? So many things zinc is involved with. There's a lot of copper in that diet too. So, and dolphins are pretty athletic. Their brain size is, in proportion to their body, is bigger than any other mammal. So they're able to communicate using sound waves and so forth. Pretty impressive. So there's a few hundred marine phytoplankton, but not all of them are consumable by human beings, but they found a good amount of them that are. And so phytoplankton belong to the same kingdom as seaweeds. It's the Protista kingdom. So like kelp and marine phytoplankton are part of the same sort of grouping, right? Talking about biology. You guys remember from biology there was a Protista kingdom? There was like bacteria, Protista, fungus, plant, animal, right? So it's the Protista kingdom. And then so some algae belong to the Protista kingdom and some algae are bacteria. So that's kind of differentiation. So here's some of the benefits of marine phytoplankton. So the fact that it's a single cell organism is so easy to consume that it assimilates into your bloodstream without going through the Krebs cycle. It doesn't have to be converted into really anything. It just becomes part of you. So there's no loss of energy, no usage of oxygen to consume marine phytoplankton. And so blue-green algae and spirulina. So what makes these bacterias and not protistas is because they don't have a nucleus. So that's kind of bacteria. They don't have a nucleus. That's kind of the difference between that. So this is brackish water. Spirulina is like a mixture of salt water and fresh water. And blue-green algae only grows in Klamath Lake. And I'm going to get talk about more about these in the next slide, but there's something very special about these that makes them blue. And blue is a very rare color in nature. This would be the lake. So here's a couple of products, marine phytoplankton and blue-green algae product that I like. and you can see this blue pigment. You notice the sky is blue not because the sky is blue. It has to do with light refraction, right? The ocean is blue not because the ocean is blue. If you put ocean in blue in the cup, you don't have blue water in the cup, right? People that have blue eyes, they don't really have blue eyes. It's the light that's hitting their eyes that's causing the eyes to look blue. So there is something about like a special effect that's happening when a substance is blue. It's like almost like an illusionary effect. And so with this particular product, the reason I like the brand on is because they concentrate the blue pigment, and this blue pigment is called phycocyanin. And phycocyanin is basically feeds the bone marrow and encourages the bone marrow to produce stem cells. And it also helps with multiple metabolic functions. So as time goes on, these things will get a little cheaper and more available. They're still a little pricey compared to other things because not a lot of people producing them. But we may have scenarios like 100 years from now. You may have like photobioreactors in your house where you're growing your own marine phytoplankton, and you have like a dispenser. You're just coming up to it and drinking from a dispenser. You might have that first like in neighborhoods, but eventually maybe 200 years from now, like all homes will have them, right? So this is kind of thinking ahead. So this is some of the sources that we can access in our grocery stores for omega-3s. Fish eggs, really good source of a complete food. Like the eggs in general, but fish eggs, good source. Oysters, really good for copper. Obviously, there's issues with contamination of the ocean, so doing some supplementation and not eating fish every day is a good idea. Like I would recommend eating fish every day. Just because who knows how polluted the environment is in regards to that. So maybe switching it off between like fish oil, krill oil supplements and eating fish. So the metaphors in some of these old movies, there might be something to it. So a lot of coded, like Wizard of Oz is a coded movie. It's an occultist movie. It was an allegory for multiple things. One of those things being the banking system of 100 years ago, the yellow brick road, the gold road, and then Dorothy had the silver slippers. And there was like a battle between using silver or gold as the base currency of the country. So this movie was kind of done in that political setting. And Toto was kind of like our truth teller, kind of the nature spirit truth teller that's undomesticated. And so with the Tin Man, you have the need for oil and also the need for a heart. And as I'm going to show you, I'm going to get into some foods now that provide oils and minerals that are very important for the heart. So cacao. So during all of our lives, there's always been an affinity between cacao, love, the heart, kind of Valentine's Day. And it's not just because it tastes good. Actually, cacao is really good for the heart. It has healthy saturated fats to help with myelination of the nervous system, but also has the omega-9, which is a very important fat for the blood vessels. It actually keeps the LDL-HDL ratio in proper proportion. So instead of like lowering cholesterol, what you want to do is get the HDL up and get that proportion, 2 to 1, 3 to 1, something in that range. And that's what these nuts and seeds will do for you. So coconut oil and coconut cream, coconut butter, they're all good, but the oil in particular is a germ fighter. Because a lot of viruses have a lipid barrier. They're actually in a coat that's made from lipids, from fat. And so the coconut oil binds to the viruses, and it basically rips through their lipid barrier, and then your immune system can identify them and deal with them. So that's an important factor. It's also very antifungal. It's the caprylic acid and the lauric acid components of the coconut oil. And the caprylic acid is used now in formulas called MCT oil. It's used like in sports fitness sections. You go to a health food store, there'll be like an MCT oil bottle in the fitness jar, because that oil does not require any digestion through the intestines. It goes right to your liver. So if you want to get a quick burst of energy, drink MCT oil, and it gives your liver fuel. And a lot of people that train use MCT oil. So that's like an extract of coconut oil that's good for athletic performance. So here's another coded allegory, I think. You have olive oil and you have Popeye. So the Popeye could be like the third eye, right, where the pineal gland is. And then the olive oil is good for the pineal gland, helps it from calcifying. And so Popeye likes olive oil. So I don't know, maybe they were trying to tell us something kind of backhandedly through this film. So avocados, you notice a lot of these fats also have antioxidants in them. So like avocado is good with vitamin E. And the antioxidants keep the fats stable when you're eating them. So you actually want to eat antioxidants. If you're taking healthy fat supplements like omega-3s, you want to take them with an antioxidant because it's going to last longer, it's going to work better. So like, for example, like the microhydrin or astaxanthin or vitamin C, whatever antioxidant you're doing, take it with your omegas at the same time, or your coconut oil. So macadamia nuts, that's kind of coming out as the skin nut. This is the skin nut because the omega-7. So omega-7 is like the skin oil. It's a rare omega, and this one actually has the best potential for dessert making, the best potential for getting children to like it. You can really spike it up with macadamia nuts, and they're the highest fat of all the nuts. They give you a lot of energy for a long time. The key is you really want to chew them well with all these nuts. You want to chew them really well, right? That's the big thing. And if you have a problem with digesting nuts, what I do is I'll let nuts soak in the honey. So I'll have like a bowl of honey with like 4 different nuts in it, and I'll sit there the night before. They'll soak up. The enzymes in the honey will pre-digest the nuts, and when I go to eat them the next day, they go down really, really nicely. So and they taste better, right? So hemp seeds, this is probably one of the best foods for elderly people who can't digest proteins too well, because the proteins inside of hemp seeds assimilate into the body really well. There's not a lot of digestive friction involved, like with animal protein. And it has a rare form of omega-6 that's anti-inflammatory, and that's the GLA. So with omega-3s are anti-inflammatory, and then most omega-6s are inflammatory. You need kind of a mixture of the both, but in the processed food diets of America, the omega-6 ratio is way out of proportion. So people get inflammation in their joints and elsewhere because the omega-3s are not catching up. So that's kind of a tip off there.
Do you soak those? Or do you...
Oh, hemp seeds, no. Those don't need anything. Yeah, those you can take them off the branch. They're the only seed that I know of that you can eat off the branch without even peeling them, right? Although I do eat sunflower seeds with the peels because I like the crunchiness of sunflower seeds. The peels, it's like once you crack them open, they're kind of too small to munch on them. So these are a good source. Chia is better, I think, because it's less estrogenic. So we're going back to that kind of keeping that estrogen in line as we get older. But a little bit of flaxseed is not going to hurt. Chia seeds really fill you up. They balloon out with water. They expand and become like 9 times the size. So like for somebody who's wanting to lose body fat by keeping their calories down, the chia seeds really kind of balloon out and they make your stomach full for longer. And runners in Mexico, the indigenous people, when they used to be carriers and run for hundreds of miles through the jungles and they like deliver messages, they would just go on chia. So that was because it has complete protein in it too. So So the Brazil nuts are very special for a number of reasons. Well, if you eat them, you're going to preserve the rainforest, because you can't grow Brazil nuts and you can't grow cacao on a plantation. They have to be growing like in an ecosystem that has special kinds of insects, because the pollination required for Brazil nuts requires these special type of bees and so forth. So you can't like plow down the forest and plant Brazil nut trees, because they won't grow. So this actually preserves the rainforest. Cashews are a great base for smoothie making. If you don't have any milk, you can just use cashew nuts in your blender, and they'll emulsify into a fine texture. So walnuts are actually considered an herb in traditional Chinese medicine, because they're so supportive of the kidney, and they're actually very revered. If you go to like a Chinese herb shop in Chinatown, you will notice that the walnuts are right there with the ginseng, kind of like in the same little neighborhood, hanging out on the racks. And I didn't really understand why that was until I started eating some of the walnuts that come from dragon herbs, and how special good walnuts really are to the brain and body. Sesame seeds. So the lignans, the fibers, they scrub out the bad estrogen metabolites, the ones that accumulate, and they have potential to create carcinogenic problems in men and women. The lignans in the sesame seeds. There's high lignan flaxseed oil too. There's lignans in different types of nuts and seeds, but sesame seeds in particular have the lignans that help with the hormones. So, and then pine nuts are another great mineral food and a hormone balancing food. Helps with HGH, human growth hormone. And pine nuts are also kind of an herb, considered an herb in Chinese medicine. If you go to the Ranch 99 store, you'll see like goji berries, reishi mushrooms, walnuts, pine nuts. They're all kind of together, and so that kind of tells you the Chinese have had that figured out. The pine nuts for a long time. Pecans. Those are one of my favorite ones with honey. Honey and cinnamon. Like, you could do the whole pecan pie thing. Like, forget about all the crust. Like, why bother like doing the flour crust thing? All you need is the honey. You need the pecans, right, and there's the cinnamon, and just out of the bowl. That's pretty much it. That's what my breakfast was this morning. Pecan in a bowl of honey and cinnamon. So, yeah, the ellagic acid. That stuff. That's what's in the stem kind, the ellagic acid. Yeah. So the ellagic acid for the arteries, that's a huge thing. So this is the highest fat berry, acai berry, and it has 3, 6, and 9. It has a little bit of saturated fat. Saturated fat, like you get in butter and other places, is what myelinates the nerves. Like our nerves have like an insulation, right? Like a wire has rubber on it. Our nerves have like an insulation on it called myelin sheathing, and the saturated fat is what myelinates your nerves. So someone who has autism, Parkinson's, epilepsy, Alzheimer's, their brain cells are demyelinating. Their insulation is coming off, right? So they're cross-wiring, they're sparking, like signals are transferred to their brain, they're just going all over the place. They can't quite get it together, right? They're shaking. Saturated fat. Coconut oil in particular, but all the saturated fats will help remyelinate the nervous system. Okay, so phospholipids, this goes back to the marine phytoplankton. So eggs are another source of the phospholipids. And omega-3s are converted to phospholipids in your brain. So phospholipids are the main component of the brain cells that provide with the brain cell with fluidity, permeability. This is a very important brain food, is eggs. You don't want to cook the egg yolk. You want it sunny side up, because you don't want to damage the yolk, because the yolk has the cholesterol in it, it has phospholipids, and you don't want to damage it. Who here takes any supplements that are phospholipids, like phosphatidylserine or phosphatidylcholine? Anybody do lecithin? Yeah? You guys have any experience with that? Okay, so this is kind of the same idea. Eggs have lecithin in it. That's kind of another source of it. So now to the animal products. So aged cheeses. So this is also stuff that's good for your teeth. The way it affects the mouth and the saliva in the mouth. Kerrygold, that's available at Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, $3. Yeah, so it's a really good butter. You can put it in your coffee, you can put it in your tea. You know, the Tibetans put the yak butter in their tea when they're high elevations for brain functioning. The yak butter tea. If you go to like a Tibetan festival, yeah.
I have a question on this product. Is it a substitute for milk? Is that it?
Well, no, milk is actually, I don't recommend milk for most people just because of the lactose, and I don't know if someone can digest lactose or not, but butter is pure fat. There's no lactose is a sugar, right? So milk has sugar, proteins, and fat. Butter is all fat. Cheese is mostly protein and fat. There's really like maybe a gram or two of lactose in cheese, maybe sometimes none at all if it's aged. So these are more digestive friendly for people. Because not all of our ancestors raised cows, right? Some of us come from parts of the world where we weren't drinking milk, and you have to develop enzymes in your body through generations in order to deal with that. And we've only been milking animals for a few thousand years on this planet. It hasn't happened for too long, so not everyone can digest the lactose. But with cheese and butter, it's a different story. Though butter is the least allergenic of all the dairy products.
What were you saying about the Tibetans?
Well, the yak butter.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they have yaks up there. They don't have cows because, you know, none of the Himalayas yaks have big furry coats, right? So they use that for energy. So when they're meditating, like keeping the stomach empty, but they want to keep their brain sharp, but the stomach empty, they're drinking the tea with the yak butter in it. Who has gone to like a Tibetan festival and was served tea with butter in it? If you've been to like one, you guys had that experience, right? So, who here knows what this animal is? It's an American antelope called the pronghorn antelope. It lives like Colorado, Idaho, kind of the Rocky Mountain area, Utah. It's still a wild animal, still lives amongst us, and Native Americans ate it, and people in America still eat it today. Not much in California, but in those states, like I see antelope meat in Washington State. So, with free-range ruminant animals, we need them running around in nature, in our environments, breaking up the soil. Their hooves aerate the soil. When the soil is aerated and broken up, water gets in, it moisturizes the soil, good bacteria is able to grow, so it provides a cycle of life. The problem with the animal products we've been eating most of our lives is they're in concentration camps. They're living in prisons with a lot of toxicity and a lot of waste accumulation, the hormones, injections. They're not eating the right foods that these animals are supposed to be eating. And so their meat is high omega-6 because of they're eating grains. It's just not the best food ever. Native Americans were pretty fit people on the most part, and they ate animals like this that were free-ranging. So what I say with this type of protein and with this type of fat, you're going to get omega-3s, you're going to get saturated fat, is basically do it not as your primary source of fat, but do it when it's appropriate to do it. If you're in the right context to eat it, it's a celebration. You know, you don't want to cook a bison probably by yourself. You want to probably do it with some friends, right? It's something you want to do as a ritual. I mean, some people have issues, just a vegan kind of philosophy. They don't want to kill animals, and I respect that. In that case, you don't need it. You'll still survive without it. But these animals are there for a reason. Human beings have been in harmony with that cycle of life for a long time. So let's consider giving them a harmonious life, and see how we can relate to them in the future in a better way. So they're out there. We just got to figure out what to do with it in a better way, right? So a couple of books. If you guys want to go deeper into this topic, this is the really kind of scientific, nerdy book on fats. Fats that heal, fats that kill. It's actually one of half-price books, I think, right now for $8 or something. So this will give you the whole breakdown. That one will just totally open up your mind on it. This one, this guy's from Israel. He wrote this book, amazing book. Really, for the main hormonal problem is accumulation of bad estrogen metabolites in men and women. That's the main problem. That's what's leading to the prostate cancers, the man testicular cancers, ovarian cancers, uterine cancers, breast cancers. It's the excess estrogen metabolites. These estrogen metabolites, they cause things to grow out of control. They cause cells to proliferate. And this estrogen is good if you're like a teenager, a teenage woman who's still growing. But you don't want this in excess. And so we're going to be going, when we have the cancer panel, we're going to go into this a little further about the estrogens, what can be done about them. But I just want to throw that out there. And a lot of these fats are anti-estrogenic, especially like organic dairy products because of the CLA content in it and omega-3s and so forth. So, all right, so that's pretty much it.
Okay.
Yeah. Any questions? I'm just about out of voice. Everyone was good?
I have a question and a comment. I am member of the Kaiser, and when they told me my cholesterol is high, they say don't eat coconut oil, coconut butter. Why? You say now we can eat.
Right.
Is some different coconut or some different coconut butter or?
Right. So basically, back in the 70s, right, politicians and big business agriculture got together, and they created a fake study, like a rigged study that said saturated fat was creating cholesterol disease in the body. And what they basically started doing is selling people vegetable oils like corn oil, soybean oil, cottonseed oil, what other ones? Canola, yeah, Crisco's, just margarines. So they got, and those are foods that those companies could control. So they started dumping these bad rancid oils onto the market and making lots. It's basically a scam between agribusiness, pharmaceutical companies that want to sell you cholesterol lowering drugs, and then the medical schools are tied in with the pharmaceutical companies. There's basically a big money racket around that whole conversation. Now, your doctor is probably not part of that. That was contrived back in the 70s, right? But the books and their teachers and the people that taught them we're still going off that information, because the hardest thing for people to do is to admit they were wrong. Especially if you're an MD and you've been talking about something for 30 years and now you got to say, I'm sorry, I'm wrong, this is not true. That's very difficult to say, right? I mean, it's difficult to say anything you're doing for 30 years to say I was wrong. It's like not easy to do, right? So that's kind of, so what the coconut oil, is a medium chain saturated fat, right? So the medium chain saturated fats are the butters and the coconut oil. Come on in. Yes. So I would as long as you're consuming antioxidants, whether they're like through food or supplements, but you should do both, then your cholesterol will be managed by your diet. So combine the healthy fats with the antioxidants, you'll be all fine. Whenever a doctor tells you something like that, you should say, okay, how do you know? Where did you get this information from? Like, you should never like have it be a one-way conversation. Like, you should always challenge them, and they won't like it, but they will not like it. I mean, you might lose that doctor, but yeah, just challenge that idea. Yeah,
I'm
that's
surprised you told that about the coconut oil, and it was like a nutrition class for cholesterol, and they say, okay, the coconut oil, coconut butter, they're going to melt. They don't going to melt and jump into butter. They're going to be stuck over there. Oh, okay.
yeah.
Take the peanut butter or take the almond butter, but no coconut butter. So, okay.
Well, you see that they hit the market like that, they also took that type of coconut oil and they also made that, put additives and everything